Hello, I'm Kirk Hanson. Marc Epstein and I have written a book, Rotten: Why Corporate Misconduct Continues and What to Do About It. We think this topic is critically important to the future of business, and we make some very strong recommendations about how the problem of misconduct can be addressed. We also want to answer in these videos a few of the most commonly asked questions about the book and about the subject of misconduct.
There are many explanations for why corporate misconduct continues. Some people suggest that we just have some bad people who have not been adequately trained in schools, or they haven't received the moral values they should have in their churches and synagogues or in their families, and that they're the problem. We call those bad apples. Some people say, no, it's really not the individual, it's the individual, but rather the corporations have caused these problems, that corporations have sometimes not have the governance and leadership and the controls in place to keep people oriented towards more ethical issues and purpose. We think about bad barrels. And then some people say, well, no, it's neither of those. It's really, we have an economic system and capitalism that causes people to act in immoral ways, especially when they get involved in certain geographies or marketplaces or industries. And though there are some issues related to each of those, that's not the basic problem. It's not the primary problem. There's a lot that each of us can do to mitigate, to reduce corporate misconduct. Kirk?
Let me talk about what's been tried and what's failed so far. We obviously first depend upon the morality of the individual business person, the man or woman who's working in the company. And we know some of them are bad apples, but also some of them are under tremendous amount of pressure and cave in a bad culture or a bad orchard, as you talked about. So the reliance on the individual morality of individual business people, just hasn't succeeded. We've tried education. Some of the moral education has taken place not just in business schools, which you and I have been involved with, but down in high schools and grammar schools, and the notion of bringing people along through the educational system that have certain moral commitments. That too has not had the kind of universal effect on prohibiting misconduct that one would like. We'd have to admit that while we think we've made some progress in teaching in business schools, that isn't a solution completely to the problem of misconduct. The most important and most extensive effort has been corporations' own work to try to create ethics and compliance programs. I think our conclusion from working with more than 100 companies between us, which we've done, is that those programs are generally pretty weak. Sometimes inadvertently, sometimes by design, executives only seeking to give lip service. But anyway, they haven't been effective in preventing misconduct in most companies. There are other approaches that have been taken, laws and regulations, sometimes to address very specific corporate behaviors, have not been adequate either, because they can't cover all of the myriad ethical questions and moral decisions that are made in a company. And finally, corporations, motivated by activists often, have tried voluntary principles programs, the Sullivan principles relating to how chemicals are handled, voluntary programs. To some extent, those have motivated corporate behavior, but rarely have they had any kind of an enforcement mechanism. And therefore, companies that are less inclined to good behavior continue to engage in less than good behavior. So, without an effective strategy to date, we've got to do some rethinking about how to control this persistent and continuing plague, really, of corporate misconduct.